So discussion topics, I split this into two different categories. Looking at groundwater, saline water projects, current and potential. Looking at current and potential ocean water projects. And I'll begin with the one on the left here. I want everybody to note that as I'm going through this, there's 600 million acre feet of brackish water supposedly in Arizona at less than 1,200 feet below the surface. Producing fresh water from brackish water costs in the range of $2 to $5 per 1,000 gallons. The TDS, total dissolved solid levels, from 1,000 to 3,000 milligrams per liter is the ideal range for treatment due to energy costs. These costs increase greatly after a TDS level of 15,000 milligrams per liter. So that's something to keep in mind as we move forward. Now, when we're looking at groundwater saline water projects, the best information that I could find is in the Central Arizona Salinity Study, 2010. They looked at several different areas in Central Arizona. A lot of these are very, very new. Some of them have been around for a while. And the ones that I could pull up the most information on that have been here for some time are the Scottsdale and Bullard water campuses. We'll be touching on those. First off, the Scottsdale Water Campus Advanced Water Treatment Facility began production in 1999 and is a reverse osmosis desalination plant. It began with a production capacity of 13.8 million gallons per day and increased to 20 million gallons per day just recently. They have replaced a lot of 8-inch diameter RO membrane with 16-inch diameter. And the reason for that is because the 16-inch diameter membranes have a larger surface area, therefore energy costs are significantly less. We will talk more about the 16 inches later on. This is a result of a partnership, it's a public-private partnership between Scottsdale and 23 golf courses, part of the Reclaimed Water Distribution System. This has been going on since the early 1990s. Basically, the water that was coming in for irrigating the turf for the golf courses was just too salty. And so they needed a desal plant to deal with that. The 23 golf courses paid roughly about $22.5 million to expand the facility's capacity to the 20 million gallons a day. And the benefits to the city of Scottsdale is that just in 2014 alone, for example, the city recharged over 1.7 billion gallons of ultra-pure water into the aquifer. I also want to note here that the brine concentrate, which is the byproduct, this is discharged all the way out to the 91st Avenue wastewater treatment plant. That's where that goes. Now, for Goodyear, it started off as the Goodyear Reverse Osmosis Facility. This was coming from the Centera well, which contained about 1,900 milligrams per liter of TDS, which is very high above the standard 500 milligrams per liter that you would need to. Anything below 500 is basically considered drinking water. Okay. Above that, then not too much you can do with it other than irrigating. 3.2 million gallons per day of brackish water is sent from the well to the reverse osmosis facility. This might get a little confusing, but the facility treats 2.7 million gallons of this, the 3.2. So the well water and provides 2 million gallons of clean drinking water, which is then mixed with 0.5 million gallons of brackish water. Right? All of this is taken from this number here. So basically, this brackish water, this 0.5 million gallons, bypasses the facility and mixes with the product at the end of 2 million gallons. Right? They have to actually mix those two just to get within the quality standards, because you can't have the water too clean. The 0.7 million gallons of brine concentrate, the byproduct, is mixed with wastewater that's then cleaned to an A+ quality at the 157th Avenue water reclamation plant. And that's stored underground. It's not used for drinking water. The capital cost for that was roughly about $2 million. This expands to the Bullard Water Campus. So on the previous slide, that facility is an emergency temporary facility. This one is a permanent facility. And its water capacity is approximately 5 million gallons per day and began operation in early 2008. And this is all the components involved in there. I won't get into all of those because that might go over a lot of people's heads. It went definitely over mine when I first looked at it. The capital cost of that facility, what I want you to take from this, is about $10.7 million just to expand capacity. Now, what do we do with all that brine that comes out? Well, Goodyear is actually doing a pilot project to see what they can do with the brine. They're experimenting with wetlands. I'll explain why that's important. But they're basically taking the brine and putting it through these wetland experimental beds. And they got salt-tolerant plants in there, reeds, grasses, and whatnot. You got green yard waste in there. And the idea here is that when the wetlands treat the brine, it saves energy. Right? So they're treating the brine and all the salt content within that brine before it enters into the 157th Avenue wastewater treatment plant. So that saves them a lot of cost. But why wetlands? Well, let's take a look at what other options there are. So there are evaporation ponds. There's a pipeline to Yuma. But this is one of the most common with the evaporation ponds for a while. But if you look at the capital cost here, so here's wetlands at $150 million for a 10 million gallon concentrate. Okay? And this is $651 for an evaporation pond. Why would that be? Because it requires a great deal more land for the same amount of brine. Because you have to spread that brine out to a thin layer to get it to evaporate correctly. And then you can shave off all of the salt. And with wetlands, it doesn't require nearly as much land. And the cost goes down as well as the operating and maintenance. This is important because we have to think about what we're going to do with that brine later on in the years. As you can see, this is from the Central Arizona Salinity Study again. All right, right now, about 2010, they're foretold here the 4 million gallons per day of brine just from Bullard and Scottsdale. Right? But if all these other water campuses go into play here, these desal plants, then they're predicting it'll go up to about 30 million gallons per day of just brine. Something to think about. I'm going to move on to the Yuma desalting plant. A lot of people have already heard about this because it's been known. It's the biggest desal plant for many, many years. It's completed in 1992. It treated saline agricultural drainage from the Wealthy Mohawk Irrigation District until it became dormant. The reason for that is because this irrigation district basically diverts that water down to the Cienega de Santa Clara, which is in Mexico, and it's basically a The Bureau of Reclamation just recently, though, conducted a year-long pilot test from May to March 2011, and they treated at 1/3 capacity of the plant about 27 million gallons per day. This was a successful project. They experimented with power consumption and efficiency, what was best for lowering power costs and still maintaining a decent amount of efficiency. They had found that operating this plant between 210 to 270 psi results in efficiency of about 60 to 70%, and it lowers the power cost dramatically. That's really where we want to be. 80% is good, but the power cost is still too high. Now, the cost of doing that particular project, they budgeted for $16.5 million. But it only ended up costing them $10.2, and the reason for that is because after 2008, the cost of all of these things, chemicals, materials, went down significantly. And so I pulled this from the report in 2012. Okay. But what about moving forward with maybe bring it up to 2/3, maybe full capacity. What would that cost? Well, the Bureau says that this is the acre feet per year that each one of these components can produce. So if you're doing only 1/3, you're doing 31,000 acre feet per year at a cost of $3 million to get all of these basic fundamental materials into place. It's going to cost a lot more to lay that foundation. But once you start to pay for increasing the capacity 2/3, you go up another roughly 30,000 acre feet per year, and then full capacity another 30,000 acre feet per year. But it's at less cost. So a lot of things you have to pay for towards the end, and look at the cost per acre foot. It starts to go down, right? So you're paying less for more, essentially. It just depends on how far you want to go. Now, moving past the desalt plants for Yuma, there's also from Black and Veatch, from the report in 2014, they saw this mound. They call it a brackish water mound. And USGS estimates that 600,000 to 800,000 acre feet of brackish water exists in that area. The estimated yield in order to tap into that is 40,000 acre feet per year. Capital cost 132. So basically what they had in their map was taking a pipe that taps into a well loop here and then pipes this out to the Yuma desalination plant. Okay. Now, some people might think after these projects in Yuma, will we just divert all that water down to Mexico in order to get some of their Colorado River water credit, or could we just keep that water in this area for Yuma to use, or maybe somewhere else? That's also a possibility.
Zach?
Yes, sir.
The Black Hawk helicopters have been operating in the Yuma area, literally, but with a process that should have matched that mound a little bit better, both as to depth and salinity.
Okay.
We should have that report within a short period of time, so that will update how much is available and the salinity content of that water.
Okay, great. Good to know. Definitely remind me of that. We appreciate it. Okay, that's good. Navajo Open Planning Area. So this is a map taken from Montgomery and Associates. But even though that's what the source is, this is a recent map that they came up with. I actually traced this map back all the way out to this Deborah Daniels map from 1973. Okay. A man called Doug Town with ADAQ helped me find out this information. He's the only groundwater quality guy over there. And I was so lucky to have his help with it. So we pulled this out, and Karen actually had this map on hand. Karen Modesto, which is AWR. And so you can kind of see the similarities here. Here's the brackish water area in the Navajo. It's just outside of it, but there's a matching similarity here. Okay, in the northeast. There's also this area along the Gila, where we see a lot of salinity in the water there, in the groundwater. There's according to our strategic vision report, this 35-mile red line here. That area has also been called out as a place that could potentially be used for a desalination plant, a small one. These numbers on the side here represent how many millions of gallons there are in that area. So you can see this area between Phoenix and Pinal County. There's a lot there, 75 million gallons, 60 million gallons, and so forth. You can see the TDS levels greatly expand in this center area of this large plot in the reservation. So once it goes above 15,000, it's not really all that cost effective to treat that water. That's something to bear in mind. Now, it's okay for this information to be old, from what I'm told, because it takes a while for groundwater to change, essentially. So this information should be still valid. Hopefully, cross your fingers. The reason why this is really important is because Little Colorado and the 8 lakes in the planning areas out here have impaired water quality due to all kinds of different factors. And these may be called, if you will, maximum contaminant levels, MCL, which Doug Town had given me a map that he had created. This is a 20-year study, and he did from 1995 to 2015. These areas here, unfortunately, do not have enough information to determine what the MCL is in those areas. However, all these colored areas you see here do have maximum contaminant levels on all kinds of different areas. Fluoride, arsenic, what have you. These areas that are in red here are the ones that popped up hot the most for various different contaminants. Okay? Keep that in mind. Now, is it possible that maybe, just maybe, we could do something with California? I.e., maybe helping them pay for a treatment process in California, say in the Imperial Valley drain water treatment system or Coachella Valley. If we do that, would they give us Colorado River water in exchange? Maybe, maybe not. But just keep in mind the yield in these areas and the capital cost. Right, so it's half the amount of yield from the Coachella Valley. It's only 100,000 acre-feet per year. However, the capital cost for this is significantly less. Only $400 million compared to the capital cost of the Imperial Valley. And that, again, is from Black and Beach in 2014. Okay. Things to consider, though, if we do something like this, we got to think about the water that's being diverted from the Salton Sea. That's reduced flow that goes into those areas. And if the Salton Sea if it dries up, like people are predicting that it might, what would that mean for dust control, all the contaminants that fly up in the air? Will that affect the people that live there? Migratory birds, that's also something that we want to consider as well. Okay. Now moving on to ocean desal. The Carlsbad desalination plant, there's a lot of information out there about this one. This is kind of like the golden child of ocean desalination. A lot of cutting-edge technology was used for this plant to make it more and more efficient. Now, this is a lot of jargon that might go over a lot of people's heads, but there's 2,000 pressure vessels and 8 RO membranes in each vessel. It draws 100 million gallons of ocean water, but produces half of that for drinking water, 50 million gallons, or 7% of San Diego's water supply. There's pre-treatment processes, and this is really important because if you don't have a pre-treatment process, your RO membranes are going to deteriorate extremely fast. So pre-treatment is really important. And you have two of them. Energy recovery devices, these are like turbochargers, the company that sells these, that reduce their energy costs by 46%, saving them $12 million annually. Basically, it just recycles the energy output back in for the operation. It costs about 40 million megawatts to operate. And now take a look at the cost per acre foot now. This is really important. We just talked about UMAs being about $46, $50 per acre foot. You get this $2,000 to $2,200 per acre foot. Now for your monthly water bill, it reflects $5 to $7. Okay? The capital cost for something like this is $734 million, and this was in private bonds in a 15-year process. Okay, so it's lumber cost, but you get more of an output out of it. They have to take the water all the way out to San Marcos to an aqueduct connection facility. They basically from an overhead process, this is the easiest map I could find to show you guys. The ocean water goes into this lagoon here. And then they pump it through a power plant that used to be operational. I think they just shut it down recently due to new EPA standards. That water was used to cool this power plant. But some of that water was taken out and given to the desalination plant here. Fresh water goes out this way to the aqueduct system. The brine goes out this way and meets that water that went to the power plant. And it goes out back into the ocean. Right? So basically, that brine is diluted before it exits. Now, potential projects moving forward. Sea of Cortez desalination plant. How likely is that to happen? we've had a lot of different estimates on this. Black and Peach had their own. The strategic vision from AWR had its own. Basically, how this would work, maybe, this had originally been planned out, was to have a desalination plant here in Puerto Peñasco. And they would have a pipeline going all the way up, it would cut through these two biosphere reserves, and it would go all the way up to Morelos Dam. Right? This pipeline, according to this report alone, cost about half of this. And the reason for that is because the pipe was closed, because they didn't want people messing with the water going up to the canal to Morelos Dam. However, if you have an open conveyance canal, the cost is significantly less. But then again, you have to think about the safety of the water as it moves up. Another issue is that if we did have a desalination plant up here, we'd also have to have a power plant to actually make it run. As of right now, this doesn't exist. Keep that in mind there. Would Mexico be willing to partner us on something like that? Maybe, maybe not. Or would they be willing to take the water from the desalination plant and give us the Colorado River water in exchange? Maybe. Now, there are some technological advances that you should be aware of when considering building a desalination plant. I talked about reverse osmosis membranes. They're made of polyamide, usually. There's also graphene, which is kind of a new breakthrough. It's only one atom thick, okay, so it's kind of sensitive. But it also can clean a lot more. There's this use of the 16-inch diameter membranes. Remember I talked about that earlier with Scottsdale? Okay. I was talking to a man with, he was with the Bureau of Reclamation at the human desalination plant. He did that project there. And he told me that the reason why people tend to shy away from 16-inch diameter membranes is because there's only one company that makes them. One. Which means if that company goes under, how are you going to get your 16-inch diameter membrane? Right? That's why 8-inch tends to be the standard, because so many people make them. There's also this dilution solution. This is a big phrase here, but using reverse osmosis pressure retarded osmosis, or, as I prefer to call it, RO-Pro, results in a decrease in energy by 30%, and that's this process right here. Basically, you can take wastewater or whatever water, and you combine it with this water here, and then you push it through this, it creates this pressure that pushes it through this turbine, and it generates energy, right? That's how you can actually reduce your energy costs that way. Recapturing and renewables. I just talked about the turbochargers earlier. I also want to note that pre-treating water, right, again, saves the life of the membranes. The membranes usually tend to last about 5 years. Environmental concerns. RO-Pro reduces salt concentration in the discharge. So when you're reducing salt concentration, that people look at that as an environmental plus. When you're using forward osmosis in smaller plants that produce no more than 26,000 gallons, okay? So for forward osmosis, there's a plant out in Oman that does this, but it's a very small plant. It doesn't have a very big capacity. However, it does see a reduction in 42% of its energy. Okay. Diffusers, and that's the things right here that release the brine into the ocean floor. Okay, that's kind of how it looks like. They spew out of the pipe, and they'll do this little plume effect, and then they'll settle down on the floor of the ocean. If you have a lot of these in one area, what's going to happen? You're going to get a lot of concentration of that brine in that area. Okay. However, if you separate out your diffusers, right, all along the ocean floor, you just have to extend your pipe out more, and you have more holes for the diffusers to spread that brine out. That helps a little bit, okay? And lastly, when I talked about membrane capacitive deionization, Anita brought this to my attention, and I was like, what is that? It is something that separates cations and anions from the water as it pushes through, okay? There's a plant in China that does this. It produces 318,000 gallons per day, so it's still, average, not that big a plant, but has a 75% water recovery rate. The energy cost is very minimal, like 22 cents. So that's something to keep in mind there too. Now, does anybody have any questions? Do I dare say?
Zach, could you go back to slide 11?
Slide 11. Yes, sir.
So, $23 million divided by 31,361 is not 552.
Okay.
I think it's off by a factor of 10.
Okay. That's possible. I pulled those numbers from this report, so I'm going to blame that guy, whoever wrote it.
Yeah, that's, I just did the math. It's 520, not 52.
Okay.
That would be absolutely incredible to be able to treat that water for $52 an acre foot. We would all be doing that right now.
Yeah. Okay.
So, just wanted to make sure everybody understood that that's not right.
Yeah.
Is that also probably true? 1, 2.
They're all true.
Same area.
Same thing. They're off by a factor of 10.
Okay. Glad you pointed that out. So a lot of the information from the Bureau, again, was back in 2012. A lot of things have changed since then, obviously. For instance, in the report, it said that to get the plant up to full capacity was going to cost $5 million. However, when I talked to the man from the Bureau of Reclamation County, he said that it's probably upwards of like 75 million. I'm afraid that a lot of these numbers are, some years old.
Zach, I got a question on your Carlsbad numbers.
Yes.
Is that O&M or is that O&M and capital payback for the 2000?
That was, as I recall reading that, Bruce, that was all-in costs. O&M capital, that was the pipeline into the city and everything.
So that's not just O&M.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the capital.
So it includes, so the 2,000 at 2,200 per acre foot includes all your capital payback.
Yeah.
I read a little bit about that subject, and I think that number is high quality raw water, but not potable water. So I think they still then have to run that water
Treat it
through
again.
a municipal water treatment plant in order to use it. I could be incorrect on that, but I believe it.
I'll speak up just because I was just there last week.
Okay.
And I drank the water out of the
plant.
It was very high quality water, potable. Nothing
You
happened.
didn't lose your hair.
Not yet. It takes time.
I might have grew a few more. No, they did a great job with that plant. They really did. They got a water purchase agreement with Poseidon, and that's where that 2,200 comes from. It does fluctuate a little bit with the cost of power, so it can get as high as 2,500. And then after 30 years, they can buy the plant for $1, and then it'll be completely theirs.
Yes, sir.
Why the big difference between the cost at Imperial versus Coachella? Twice as much as Imperial.
Right. And I have some other factors. Like that slide. Okay, so I believe, let me look at the components here.
Is the quality of water significantly different, Zach?
And the capitals.
So the Imperial Valley has, say, 500 million gallons per day of flows into the Salton Sea via the Alamo and New Rivers. Deposit treated water into the Coachella Canal or the All-American Canal with an extended pipeline. Say much more than that. That's all I can extract from the Black and Beach report. It might be because yield from that is so much higher, and it tends to cost more this as the yield goes up. No?
Well, one is a 200,000 acre foot facility at a capital cost of $2.25 billion.
Yeah.
that size and capacity with a capital cost of 25%. Something,
Yeah. So what I did notice,
something.
what I did notice when I was going through some of these reports from the consultants is that, for instance, the Bureau of Reclamation recommends certain components for the desalination plant. They tend to be a lot cheaper than ones from the consultant would recommend. Okay. They add a lot of additional things because they want it to be a high quality plant. Okay. So that might be what happened here with Black and Beach. They might be recommending all sorts of components that may not be as necessary as we might think they should be. Okay. So just keep that in mind when looking at some of these costs. It's just coming from one consulting company.
I think especially when it comes to these capital costs like this, and probably most of the people in this room have experienced this kind of stuff. I mean, it's so dependent on location, quality, level of detail, all kinds of things, and all the costs Zach has provided us are going to be kind of a general rule of thumb, but until you get down to a specific project and what that cost is going to be and the true cost, that's when really the rubber meets the road on those kind of things. So a quarter of the cost is, I mean, that's not even close, but it's
one of the things that I think might put light on that is if you were to look up, and I've read quite a long article on the Escondido, California municipal water, okay, and they talk about how they get some water directly from the Metropolitan Water District. They get some water from this source and that source. They get water from the Carlsbad facility. And the bottom line, they then break all that down and they pay the San Diego County Water Authority about $1,050 to $1,100 an acre foot. And that's a blended rate. So, I mean, that includes water from the desal plant, includes water from whatever, from various and some sources. They then sell that water, which they consider raw water.
Yeah.
They then sell that water to the individual communities. So San Diego County Water Authority charges the municipalities something in the neighborhood of $1,050 to $1,100. And then the city then sells it to you and me and anybody that lives there.
Yeah, there's tons of examples of different projects that have occurred over time, and like I said, all the infrastructure costs, billing costs are all going to be different. So,
but I like this because it was a 2016 budget. I mean, that was so it was current and.
John?
Yeah, just to add to what you're saying, Bob, we don't know what the TDS load is. It could be 4 times more than the one, and that's why you have the major difference in cost.
Yeah.
Right. You know what's going on.
Zach, another question. Did you happen to do any cost trends on desal and where things are headed and what it looked like 10 years ago versus where it's at today, and what projections are associated with treatment costs?
I didn't look at anything from way back when, like 10 years ago. I didn't look at that. I was looking more of cost. Like I was talking about on the second slide there, cost me $2 to $5. Extra. I'm glad you brought that up. I'll definitely look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions before we move on? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Locke.
All right. The next thing on the agenda is kind of the discussion we've been having, but to talk about what are the types of projects that you guys see that we would want to discuss moving forward. But on top of that, what I would also like you guys to think about is what are the questions that we have to answer moving forward. You know, this is, we're kind of embarking on something that is got more questions than answers. Where would you go? What kind of water quality you're looking for? What are the pros and cons of each area? How do you even make a determination on where you would do a pilot project? So I throw it out for you guys' input and see what you all think. John, any thoughts?
Well, just the location of where on the map where all the brackish water is. What's the land ownership? Is most of it federal land?
Some of it is. I mean, there's a lot of federal land.
Yeah.
It's quite possible.
Right.
Private.
Yeah.
Yes, a good chance that some of it's federal or state.
I think the question would be how much is truly accessible to entities in the area and how much would be dependent from extraction based on the land ownership.
You know, in the Buckeye, it's probably private land in that area. Private.
Yeah.
May I just ask a question about this? I think we do some talks like that about Goodyear wetlands treatment. And the concept is that by using a certain kind of plant life, the plants will absorb the salt. But don't the plants then have to be, that doesn't remove the salt from wherever the area of the wetland is. So does there not another cost then that has to be considered to get rid of the plant? Because over time, I presume you have to harvest those plants. I mean, does the plant absorb the salt?
Yeah, Goodyear's really looking to get rid of some metals. Selenium was their key constituent of concern with their discharge permit in that area. So they were targeting plants that would specifically remove certain ions.
Right.
And yes, they do have to harvest them and dispose of them. And all of their costs, I know they factored into what they were going to be doing with that life.
So the salt goes to the wetlands.
Yeah, so they discharge into the wetlands to remove certain ions.
So the way that I understand it, again, I'll speak up here, and hopefully I'm not out of turn. Somebody who's more of an expert on this, that's fine. They're salt-tolerant plants,
Right.
but they don't really absorb the salt. So the salt will go through the soil, and then there's an under-drain system where they pick up the water, they collect it, and they blend it with their wastewater stream. And they get the TDS down to an acceptable level through blending it.
That goes out to the power plant for coolant water, I understand.
No, I think they either discharge it or they have some groundwater saving facilities or things.
They bring it up to the 167th Avenue wastewater treatment plant, which is in Goodyear. Right, so it goes through there, and they put that into an underground aquifer.
They used to discharge to us, at Palo Verde, us, but they don't any longer. They discharge now to a groundwater storage facility so they can get the credits.
I'm sorry to get past here, but so what is the salinity of the water then that they're discharging into the aquifer?
I don't know.
I don't have that number.
Philip, do you know?
I don't want to say for sure, but it's, you know, they got to blend it down to a certain level in order to get a permit to do it. But I don't know exactly what that number is.
So good conversation, but a little off track of the discussion that I wanted to have.
Just listening to Zach's presentation, it seems like, at least today, you have kind of these boutique opportunities. to treat the water. You know, you have the Scottsdale example, you have what Goodyear's doing. And then he mentioned one, you know, I think in terms of baseload plants and peaking plants, and the baseload opportunities seem to be a much larger challenge when it comes to these large desal facilities that serve a large base because of the infrastructure costs, et cetera. And so as we work through this, I think that we're, you know, looking to the future, I'm not sure if that's still going to be the same trend, but it seems as if in the near term, you know, you have these boutique opportunities that you should probably pursue, but I'm not sure in the longer term if these larger baseload facilities may make more sense. I don't know.
So one of the notes I jotted down for myself is, like always, so what are we trying to accomplish here? I mean, when you talk about augmentation of supplies, is it, who's the target recipient of the augmentation project? And what does that look like as we move forward in time? And what is that period of time? You know, there's a million questions, but I try to boil it down to something simple for myself to kind of put the end in mind, and then I can step back and say, what's my path to get to that end? And so, you know, is the end goal here that 50 years from now we need a supply of water that keeps the state a viable, economically viable state to live in, do business in, to raise our kids in, those kind of things? And how do we get from where we are today to that 50-year look ahead without breaking the bank, I guess is the, or having unintended consequences? I mean, you know, what is the impact of any of the areas? I mean, we have these brackish water supplies, but what's the long-term impact if we go taking those supplies out that have been in existence for 100 years or more, and we start using those supplies for our drinking water supply? You know, and I think those are all the kinds of questions that we need to come up with some kind of an answer to as we progress through this process here. I think costs and technology and those kind of things, I mean, we need answers to all of those. And what I'd like to put together is some kind of a graph that shows some kind of sliding scale on cost per unit, per milligram per liter of TDS. And I think there's people who's probably already done that. So going out and just usurping something that's already been done is always my favorite thing to do. That way I put less effort into my work. And what kind of treatment you need. But some of the more maybe sensitive questions, I think, are some of the things that we need to answer in this group.
Jerry, do you have supply shortfall information that we could use in general terms and where those might be occurring so that you could use that information to help answer some of these questions that Bob's?
Well, we do have that coming out of the WRDC project.
Right.
I mean, it did it by county and groundwater basin, but we do have, we refer to it as the demand and supply imbalance.
So that could be a data source.
We can use that information to kind of line us all up on the same page.
Right.
And,
right.
Just to add to what you were saying, Bob, it's what supplies are we, the other question is what supplies are we trying to augment? Are we trying to augment agricultural supplies in exchange for municipal supplies, or vice versa, or for mining? You know, what sector should be targeted? Because from a treatment perspective, we can treat the water to any quality the end user needs it to be.
yeah, absolutely.
And whatever that cost is, if you can use the 800 TDS water and still supply ag, it's that cheaper by augmenting and offsetting that ag traditional use and making that supply available for municipalities at 400 TDS. So there's a variety of chess pieces to move around.
Or you could look at it and say, you know, you're going to meet all demands, and you just bring the right type of water to the right end user.
Yeah, you know, and it may come down to location of the facility, and what is the what is the supply and demand in each one of those locations, and who would then be the end user. And another little question about how do you get it to them? Our pipelines aren't cheap. And you don't put them in the ground and forget about them, as I well know.
And I think that was one of the key things that was brought out of the WRDC is the majority of the water is not necessarily where the need is.
Where the need is. Right.
So in that WRDC study, Jerry, does it have like the map that Zach had, all the locations of all the brackish groundwater that exists in the state and the quality of each one of those and the quantity, and then has DWR done projections on the development that occurs over time, and how long do those resources change over time?
So I cannot answer in the actual WRDC report. It doesn't go specific enough that it has the maps of the brackish groundwater, but I'm sure that hydrology. I'm sure our hydrology folks have those areas mapped out. I just don't know if it was actually incorporated either in a subcommittee report or in an appendices of the WRDC report. But we could definitely get that. And then your second question on
kind of modeling, you know, have some of these may have, because they're in more of a urban area, and some of them may not have had any modeling done of that area to see what do our models show as the longevity of that supply. As we build out and maybe agriculture goes away, was that the source of input to that water supply?
Okay, so you were talking just about the brackish groundwater.
Yes. Yes.
I cannot answer that, but
No?
I can definitely
answer to everything, Jared.
I can find somebody who can answer it. So what you're looking for is in any of the models that we have, that we're doing projections out with demands against those models, if that brackish groundwater component was incorporated within it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, one of the last things we'd want to do is invest a lot of money into a shrinking supply. I mean, I've done plenty of foolish things, and that would just add to the list, but rather not.
And my first blush is I do not believe it has been included, but no one can leave the room and say that because I don't know for sure.
When I was pulling up the Deborah Daniels report, that's the best thing I could find on the amount of brackish water in the ground in the state. Yeah, so considering how old that is, it's probably fluctuated some.
Yeah, but as you said, I mean, there's not been a lot of people accessing the brackish groundwater supply in the state right now. I mean, there's cheaper supplies than that exist today. The only thing we've been doing with most of the brackish groundwater is trying to get rid of it from whatever area it's in, so it doesn't come up out of the ground. Waterlogged areas.
This is recent work done in the Buckeye waterlogged area. Yeah. We can gather that for next time.
Okay. So, what else is there that we need to know as we move forward? Wade, any thoughts? I always love to hear
Those
from
are the
you.
main points that we need to know. As we get further into this, there's going to be a lot of details that we're going to have to pick up the information on, but we've kind of got the broad strokes identified. Each of these issues is kind of complicated. For instance, the product water. Agriculture is concerned about the product water.
Yeah, I bet.
So we need to look at what the chemical makeup of the product water is. It's one thing to remove what we call the TDS, but we're not sure down in the Yuma area if the water will be the same. Just reducing the salt, which is not what you do. You take a little bit more than just salts out of the water, so we want to look at that.
Salt is such a general term. I mean, when you really do water treatment, you start talking about specific ions, and absolutely, you know, that's one of the things you don't want to do is have unintended consequences, especially when it comes to our ag water supply. And
we don't know.
Yeah.
We just don't know.
Yeah. But all the stuff we can find out.
I think we should also identify why some of these projects were successful and why they continue to remain successful, so we go in with open eyes, you know, so people understand that, you know, what it's taken, why they were successful, and then how do you replicate that moving forward if you do need to build additional plants.
And what projects, I guess, also, what projects weren't successful and why?
And why, yeah.
So we don't just duplicate that as well.
Yeah, so I think that's important.
Yeah.
And then maybe look into the future, what's changing, and then what might drive potentially accessing either brackish water.
You know, one of the big things that we'll need to address at some point, but it's the big question is inland desal is brine discharge. I mean, thermal evaporation right now, it would make that so expensive that you wouldn't do it. Evap ponds, believe me, I know, they're very expensive, and we don't have that much land here. We would be looking for state and federal land to build these things, and they're not maintenance free either. So finding a cost effective solution to brine discharge is the make or break kind of thing to me.
How much expertise do we need at the table, and where are we going to get it?
So that's a great question, and I think one of the things we need at the table is Misael Cabrera from the committee, because DEQ is the expert in regulations on deep well injection. Is one of the things that's been talked about in this state for a long time, and we've said we can't do it, no way. Other states have done it. Many states have done it. So what is the...
Maybe we could take examples of what other states have done and see if they're applicable here. For instance, we were talking about Colorado on the drive here, that Colorado injects deep well.
I mean, and I don't know, I'm not the expert in geological formations, but I would like to understand more of why we can't do it.
If I might chime in, if I remember in the Montgomery and Associates report, they said they were not able to find, to their ability, any area in Arizona where you could do a deep well injection. In that slide that I had up there, where it compared all those different methods for brine disposal, it even has a little asterisk there where it says from the Central Arizona study that deep well injection was just not possible in Central Arizona. That's what they said.
So I want a little more meat to that answer than that. And so I think we need to find out, and Misael is going to be the guy with the expertise and the staff that can give us those kind of answers, I think.
Well, again, both on desalination from the ocean and inland desalination, where's our expertise on that? How are we going to get the answers to some of the technical questions? Zach?
So are any of any of you guys at the table on any research committees that are looking at membrane technology?
A little bit. Arizona, Mexico, right?
And
States entity.
So I have access to some information from some research places.
Okay.
You guys do too.
So,
We can invite technical experts to come in and speak to us. There's some people from Sandia Labs that I can contact, and they would come over and talk to us, give us a presentation, make us a little smarter on membrane technology and what's going on in research and development. What's the future look like? And so if you guys want, I'd be happy to reach out to them and see if they could come over for the next meeting.
Zach's slides were great, but most of them he took from some other report.
Correct.
We could probably bring in human desalt people fairly easily, and
Yeah.
they would have some knowledge, although most of it's been mothballed for a while.
I know Angela Adams worked down there, and she's a great source of information. That young lady has a lot of knowledge of that plant and down there. So, yeah, I would love to hear her perspectives of the plant and how it operated.
I think that's a good idea. Sandia, Angela.
What else do we want to find out? What else do we want to learn? I mean, this committee is a great opportunity for all of us to get to learn something. So,
I think at some point we have to consider the cost and how to finance that.
But what I would like to do is find out the cost and have some kind of a, how do we base our cost? But then the finance committee, our job to me is we tell them how much we need, and that subcommittee needs to go get us the money.
But I think that's part of that discussion of why did some of these smaller projects work, or why are they working?
Yeah.
Because costs are a component of that.
Oh, yeah. Well,
What drove it?
when you're talking $1,000 to $2,500 an acre foot, the market's not there yet, right? I mean, when your next bucket of water is going to be that or more, then it makes sense to do it, right?
Yeah.
But until the cost of water is high enough or the need is there, then you don't do it. I mean, just economics.
I think there is a market for some of these specialty uses.
I think so too. I think we're getting to that point.
And they need it for another purpose.
The other question, and this may be one for Glenn, is what are the political issues that have or would be a deterrent, or are there any?
Well, the political issues would be concerning the cost, and there would also be some political issues if you're talking about doing something with Mexico. I think that there's a lot of positives in that. There's a lot of dialogue that's already been going on through the Arizona-Mexico Commission and the very warm and even getting warmer relationship between Arizona and Sonora, could make something across the border attractive. But I'd probably say that the top issue would be the cost. And I think someone framed it earlier today. It's clear that the technology continues to improve. It's a lot, in a way, if you think about it, like solar photovoltaics. Maybe not exactly the same downward cost trend, but the more of these facilities that get built, the cheaper it gets. We don't see it going this way, we see it going that way. So the later you can wait, the cheaper the technology will likely be. One person that I've got to know over time is Sharon Megdal over at the University of Arizona, who has spent a lot of time in Israel on the different. I think they're now up to 5 or so desal plants. So, I think probably having a direct hook into the subcommittee with someone with the knowledge of what's going on there would be useful. But I think that this is my own personal feeling, I do think this is going to be part of the Arizona water future. It's simply a question of when, where, when, what, and what cost.
Yeah. Thank you. So one of the things that Tom said in the last meeting was, so this is what I wrote down. The scope of this subcommittee will be to explore opportunities for in-state desalination with a focus on brackish groundwater and effluent supplies. The areas that we wanted to cover in this group are what are the in-state water resources, which we've talked about, quantity and quality. What is the technology for desal, which we've talked about, cost and energy requirements. And so that was my notes after I volunteered to chair the subcommittee. So I think one of the things that when we talk about the out-of-state Mexico is there's some groups already looking at that, and we don't want to step on each other's toes on that. So I think this scope will keep us entertained for a while.
And Robert, I would say I would agree to me that would be the right place to focus for now. Longer term, there may be some more exotic things, but I think the director's charge is a wise one.
Yeah.
What is the time frame you're looking at?
I like to look at 50 to 100 years. I mean, I understand our crystal ball gets pretty fuzzy. Mine usually gets fuzzy beyond a week, but I think that's where we need to be looking at, and how do we get there? Of course, we're going to be looking at everything in between. Don't get me wrong, but really, it is that long-term look that I think is the charge of this group.
I think we can get our work done well before 50 years.
You think so? And I think you better be right, Wade, or it's going to get kind of. Yeah. I was trying to figure out how to say that.
A political question. One of the things that's going to drive all the things you've been talking about is what's the state going to do with regard to the overbalance, and I think they call it safe yield. Are they going to actually start shutting people off with water if we don't achieve safe yield in what year, 2025 I think it's now? Or is that just going to move that year out and move that year out, move that year out? Because if they push that issue and start cutting people off, that's going to have a big issue. So is there...
Jerry, I'll let you answer that one.
It is a goal only.
So they're going to push it up. Okay.
And I would suggest our assumption is that goal stays in place.
Absolutely. I think you're right.
Just use it.
That is just a goal. Okay.
Well, it's just a goal. It is kind of, I think, not a way we should coin that, right? I mean, that should be our goal and our charge, and what the community does to protect our water resources. And is DWR going to go and cut somebody off? I don't know if they could if they wanted to. They could fine you. They could do things that would make you cut back. But this state has done a lot of work to achieve those goals, and this group our generation needs to continue on that path forward. I mean, just a couple of years ago, didn't we do a study in the Phoenix AMA that we were at safe yield?
That's one of the last things Sandy did.
Yeah.
Coming out of the assessment.
We had achieved safe yield in the Phoenix AMA about 2 years ago. Was that done, Jerry?
Well, the assessments were done in 2010, so your perception of time is about the same as mine. I think it just happened yesterday, it was like 2.5 years ago.
And I'm still 30.
Right. Me too. I'm a little younger than that. I'm 29. But I think that the most recent evaluation that I'm aware of was done in conjunction with the assessment.
Okay.
And it looked out to 2025.
Oh, a good question, and I think something we ought to keep in mind. Right, the next agenda item is, we've been talking about select and prioritize objectives, and so I think that is really more of homework assignments, which Jerry's got a few of them, and I have a couple. One is to contact some folks at Sandia Labs to see if they would be available for educating us. Also Angela, to see if when she would be available to make a presentation for us. And Sharon Megdahl also is an excellent resource. She's done a lot of work in the WRDC, or the WRRC. Too many acronyms that are very similar. What's that?
Miss A.L.
Oh, yeah, Miss A.L. Zach, can you,
I can do
you can do that?
I can
Okay.
do that.
So you can touch base with him and let him know that we volunteered him to participate in the committee.
Voluntold?
Yes.
Yeah, gotcha.
So he was an additional member that needs to be. Some other people that weren't able to make it today, Chuck Collum. So Ted Cook asked Chuck to represent him on the committee. And I've been in touch with Chuck, so I'll follow up with him on what his homework assignments are, which I will ask him if he's got some information on cost of treatment on some kind of sliding scale, which I think he may have access to. And anything else I can think of, because he volunteered to do anything I ask him to do. And other than that, what else? Did I miss anything?
Let's see. Just for clarification, you want Misael to talk about deep well injection next time?
I would like him to be on the committee.
Be on the committee? Okay.
Yeah.
But do you want him to talk about deep well injection?
Yes.
Yes, okay, got it.
Both.
Both.
And then you mentioned a presentation of membrane technology. Is that something you'd like to target for the next meeting, or
Yes.
further out?
The next meeting, I would like to have that presentation.
That's so key in
Yeah.
everything we do on
Yeah. I think we need to get up to speed on what's going on with technology and what's up.
Sandia have that type of information?
Yes, they've been doing some research on graphene membrane technology that is several years out, but it is, bench scale looks like quite an advancement in technology.
So are we.
Yes.
We're several years out.
Yes, so are we. And that's why I thought, that's a good one to have a presentation on. And I know Angela has done quite a bit of work on membrane technology. So we may have more than one presentation at the next meeting, or we may spread them out. It depends on the availability of these folks.
We'll see if we can extract anything out of this multi-state salinity council group and share reports or anything.
So, Brandy Kelso was on that committee. Also, Mike Hightower, I think from Sandia, was on that committee. So we may talk to them and see what kind of knowledge we can gain, insight we can gain from them.
Bob, I had two other things written down, and I think it's stuff that DWR could provide assistance. The whole discussion about the ones that were successful, why, and the ones that weren't,
Yes.
why.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be great, yeah.
And then the other thing I had written down was Brian just spoke. Did you want to see if we could do a little more research on that?
If you could, or if you could talk to Missy L and see,
Okay.
because I think between the two, DEQ and DWR, I think there's a lot of information out there on brine disposal.
But if you could do some research on what other states have done,
Or not even thinking other countries.
even other countries, yeah, that'd be good. Sharon may have some
Yeah,
knowledge
that's
on
what
that
I
too.
was thinking.
Yeah.
So you got that, Jerry?
I do.
Okay.
And it's been recorded if I don't. No, I'm kidding.
And Zach's going to post it on YouTube, so.
The coin works out.
Yeah. All right, so I think we skipped to number 6, assigning tasks. So we're a little ahead, but that's okay with me. Are there any other members that anybody can think of that we need to persuade to join?
We went through Masail and Chip.
Yeah. All right, with that, any other comments from the public? Please speak up. I mean, it's been kind of open anyway. I really don't have any problem with that. Engagement is always better. We get a lot more accomplished if everybody kind of participates. But if anybody's got anything.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'm Jennifer Martin here representing the Grand Canyon chapter of the Sierra Club, and you kind of touched on it in one of your comments, but I just wanted to highlight that something that we're primarily concerned with is seeing flow maintained in rivers and streams in Arizona for wildlife habitat value and just general ecological value. So I think in future meetings we'd be really interested in hearing what you're able to find out when you're looking at pumping additional groundwater, and now we're looking at, the brackish, highly saline groundwater as compared to the groundwater we've traditionally pumped in the past. And so I'm not really sure what the impacts are as far as dewatering seeps, springs, streams, sometimes even the smaller, more remote ones that we aren't thinking of when we think of dewatering the major rivers can be very important for wildlife habitat. So I don't know what we know about what the impacts there could be from pumping and beginning to desalinate the saline groundwater. And then kind of related to that, and you guys touched on this as well, but I'm curious, and it might be early in the process to really do this calculation or figure it out, but has anyone begun thinking through and kind of crunching the numbers on, okay, if we did try to capitalize on all the in-state saline groundwater resources that we have, how does that compare to what the future water needs are? So that can be part of that cost-benefit analysis when you're looking at ecological impacts. It's like, if there are going to be some impacts to wildlife, for example, and even if we capitalize on those resources as much as we possibly could, it's still a drop in the bucket of our future needs. That's part of that determination of whether it's a good idea or not. So those are kind of some of the things I'll be looking for in the future.
I think that is the part of the unintended consequences kind of thing. We don't want to solve one problem and create 10 more.
Right.
So,
thank you.
And if you have any information that already exists that you guys have done that you can share, it's I think appreciated.
Okay, thanks.
You can send it to me.
You betcha.
Yes, sir.
Roy Hockey. I was thinking maybe, because you're talking salt levels, I'm in the golf business, but maybe bringing the universities or different industrial groups, what salt levels for food plants, what's the highest level you can do, still grow plants. they bring in University of Arizona, they have, fields down there and stuff like that. They've been doing a long time on community issues and work with the agriculture community, talk to Paul Brown or ASU or something just like it.
Okay. That'll be something for future discussion, I think. Thanks, Rory. Anybody else? All right. So, schedule the next meeting.
How aggressive and how much time do we need?
Probably a lot of time.
How much time do we need before the next meeting?
So I would think probably early November would probably be where I would target, and that'll give me enough time to reach out. And you guys have more work than anybody else, so Jerry, is that enough time to put together? Okay. So,
Like second week in November,
yeah,
like 7th, 11th.
yeah.
Not Thursday, that Thursday. I'm flying to Iowa, so, or you could do it without me. But.
So there is Veterans Day, and that
On the
Yep,
Friday, so
oh.
so Wednesday would be a great day to.
Yeah. Wednesday?
The blood spatters. The 9th works. The 11th probably not the best day.
9th is okay with me.
So we got November 9th, Wednesday.
How's that work for everybody else?
I'm just going to pop out and just make sure it's really available, but I'll just make sure.
Okay. Oh, that's right. You're flying. You won't be here on the 11th.
So between now and then, we have the GWAC meeting on the 28th of October, and we will also have a finance committee meeting before November 9th as well. Hopefully, Mr. Rick Lavis will do an update on the finance committee meeting at the October 28th meeting, and we'll have a little bit of synthesis or exchange of knowledge between the groups.
Excellent. Thank you.
Maybe we ought to have Rick visit this committee meeting next time.
He's always welcome. We'll reach out and invite him. How about that? I'm not sure I can make him do anything, though. November 9th, 10, yeah, that works for me.
Okay.
10 to noon?
Yes, sir.
Same time. All right. I really appreciate the discussion. This was fun for me. Everybody's got a different opinion of fun and different definitions, but this was fun. So we'll just continue to check off the questions, and please, if you have anything that comes up, if you have any questions that you think of after the meeting, please send them all to Zach, and he'll get them. We'll get them distributed so we can be thinking about them for the next meeting. And we'll make some headway on this.
Be sure and tell Chuck we had fun.
Think of anything you want me to assign.
If anyone wants to be put on an email list for the Desalination Committee, please send me an email, let me know so I can put you on that list. When I distribute information, everybody has it. Thank you.
All right, thanks everybody. Have a great day.